These strong men had a face-off with a ruthless gorilla that attacked their village. They were determined not to abandon their village for no monster or beast, not even the almost giant gorilla. Would they come out victorious? Well, stay glued. Let's find out. Iduka was a village of peace, rhythm, and tradition. The roosters crowed at dawn. The women hummed as they tied wrappers and carried baskets to the farm. And the men walked the red soil path with hoes on their shoulders. Life followed a sacred cycle. Plant, harvest, dance, rest. But this season was different. It started with whispers. Then came the footprints. The footprints were monstrous, nearly 2 feet long and wide as a mortar base. Chidi, a young farmer, was the first to see them near the okra fields. He called others and they gathered, staring in silence. "These are not leopard prints," said Ojin, the old hunter. "Too deep, too wide, and too many," added Ngozi, holding her baby tighter. By noon, more signs followed. Banana trees, stripped clean. Cassava stalks, ripped from the earth like weeds. Entire plantain groves, flattened. Still, the people tried to convince themselves it was some passing beast. Maybe a stray buffalo, maybe even a roaming elephant. But no one could explain the rhythmic thump, thump, thump they began hearing at night, like something huge beating its chest in the woods. Then came the day the gorilla showed itself. It was a humid afternoon. The sun hung low, and the farm was busy with men and women, harvesting yams and weeding maize. The air was thick with sweat, laughter, and the occasional folk song. Suddenly, the birds fell silent. Not one flutter, not one chirp. Then came a low growl, deep, rumbling, like thunder, rumbling underground. The ground trembled. From the edge of the forest, trees shook violently. Branches snapped. Then, it appeared. A monstrous figure tore through the underbrush. Tall as 2 men, standing on each other's shoulders, with shoulders like hills. Black fur matted with mud and leaves, and eyes that glowed with wild rage. The gorilla roared. Not the sound of any ordinary beast. It was a sound that silenced the heart. A roar that froze every hand holding a hoe. Mothers grabbed their children. Men turned in disbelief. "What is that?" shouted Mazibe, dropping his machete. Before anyone could run, the gorilla charged. It moved faster than its size suggested. With a mighty swing, it struck a palm tree and snapped it in half. It stormed through the yam beds, uprooting mounds with every stomp. Bags of harvested crops flew into the air. Baskets crushed. Calabashes shattered. "Run!" someone screamed. But it was chaos. Men stumbled. Women screamed. Children ran toward the village crying. The gorilla roared again and beat its chest with fists like hammers. It picked up a wheelbarrow and tossed it like a pebble, narrowly missing Chinyere, who fainted on the spot. Ikene, a young farmer, tried to throw a stone. The gorilla turned on him with fury and pounded the earth so hard that Ikene lost his footing and rolled down the yam ridge. He scrambled away, heart pounding. Within minutes, the once busy farmland had turned into a battlefield of dust and ruin. The gorilla, breathing heavily, stood in the center of the destruction, roaring into the sky, king of all it surveyed. Then, just as quickly as it came, it vanished back into the forest. The silence that followed was chilling. The people slowly crept back to the fields, trembling. The yams were gone, maize flattened, fruit trees destroyed. It was not just a loss of food. It was a warning, a terrifying message from the wild. Back in the village square, people gathered with anxious faces. Children wept. Farmers stared at their cut hands. Mothers clutched their children, as if shielding them from an invisible shadow. Elder Amadi stood and spoke solemnly. "This is no ordinary gorilla. This is Ogauru, the spirit of the forest in the form of a beast." "What does it want?" someone asked. "To make us bow," another replied. "No," said Old Pao Denigbo, rising slowly. It wants to test if we are still the people our ancestors were. We cannot run. We must remember who we are. But fear was already creeping into hearts. No one had ever seen such a creature in living memory. No one had ever fought such raw strength with bare hands. And yet, as the village drums sounded in the distance that evening, a fire began to burn in the hearts of the brave. A decision was forming. A vow that would change the history of Iduka forever. They would not run. They would fight. The sun rose over Iduka with a heavy silence. The usual songs of the market women were missing. No laughter came from the farms. The village had been wounded, its crops trampled, its peace shattered, and its pride challenged. But from that wound came fire. The 100 men who had volunteered gathered in the central square. No one forced them, no one paid them, but they came, some barefoot, some in tattered wrappers, some still nursing bruises from the first attack. Among them were old hunters, wrestlers, blacksmiths, drummers, fishermen, and teenage boys eager to defend their land. They had no guns, but they had ropes, spears, clubs, rusty machetes sharpened overnight. Some carried charms from the local dibia, herbalist. Others simply wore red cloths tied around their foreheads, a symbol of war and courage. Ezemuo, with arms like carved wood, stood before them. "We are not just fighting a beast," he said. "We are fighting fear. If we fall today, we fall as warriors. If we win for every child that sleeps hungry, for every woman who walks in fear." The crowd responded with a shout, "For Iduka!" That day, the warriors split into groups. Group 1, led by Okike, the village wrestler, would distract the gorilla. Group 2, made up of the strongest blacksmiths and hunters, would lay traps and ropes. Group 3, including swift-footed boys like Uche and Ikena, would run messages and help confuse the beast. For 3 days, they labored in secret. Near the gorilla's path, they dug a massive pit, 10 feet deep and lined with pointed bamboo stakes. The top was covered with dry branches and banana leaves. It was hidden so perfectly that even a careful man would not notice it. On the 4th day, the men positioned themselves around the pit before dawn. The village women had prayed all night, placing bowls of water at the foot of shrines. Drums were silent. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. And then, he came. The trees shook. Birds fled in a cloud of panic. With a roar that shook the heavens, the gorilla burst into view, pounding its chest, enraged beyond reason. Its eyes were wild, its fur darkened with mud and battle scars. Group 1 leapt into action. Okeke shouted and waved his red cloth, drawing the gorilla's attention. The men beat drums, banged on pots, and clashed their machetes together. The gorilla charged, tearing through shrubs, aiming straight for them, but it didn't fall into the trap. At the last second, the beast leapt, its powerful legs launching it high over the pit. It landed with a ground-shaking thud on the other side and roared with fury. The men gasped. The trap failed. Someone screamed. "Back to the plain!" shouted Ezemuo. The beast lunged. It grabbed Chuka, a palm frond weaver, by the leg and tossed him like a rag. He landed hard, his cries sharp in the chaos. Still, they fought on. The warriors swarmed the gorilla from all sides. Spears were thrown. Ropes were flung. One landed around its neck, another around its arm. But the beast was too strong. It pulled, and 2 men were dragged across the dirt. It tore through ropes as if they were grass. With one powerful swing, it struck Mazi Okechukwu in the chest, sending him crashing into a tree. The ground became a storm of noise. Grunts, screams, drum beats, and the deep growl of the gorilla. For over an hour, the battle raged. Dust filled the air. Blood was spilled. The 100 men attacked again and again, not to kill, but to wear the beast down. Then, amid the chaos, Ikena the trapper spotted something. The gorilla had a pattern. When surrounded, it always turned in the same direction to attack. It left its left side exposed. Ikena shouted to the others. "We cannot fight strength with strength," he cried. "We must trap it with its own pride." They changed the plan. Instead of surrounding it evenly, the men opened a path, leading toward the abandoned quarter of the village, where the old stone well stood. Around that well, earlier that morning, Ezemu had coiled a massive iron chain, once used to move carts in the colonial era. The plan was risky, but now it was the only chance. Drummers beat a new rhythm. Group 3 led the charge, waving burning torches, shouting insults at the beast, distracting it. The gorilla roared and followed, charging through the narrow path left open for it. It was tiring. Its steps slowed. Its breathing grew louder, heavier. Finally, the gorilla reached the well. The trap was sprung. Okiki and Ezemu charged from behind and leapt onto its back. Others followed. 10 men, then 20. The gorilla fought like a hurricane, thrashing, grabbing, tossing 2 men high into the air. But the rest held firm. Ropes wrapped around its legs. The iron chain was pulled tight around its neck and locked around the stone pillar of the well. The gorilla roared one last time, shaking the earth, but its body began to give in. Its legs buckled. Its chest heaved. Its eyes, once burning with rage, now blinked with exhaustion. It was over. The people of Iduka had captured the beast. With no guns, only heart, only unity, only raw courage. When the last man stepped back and silence fell over the village, the women and children came out of hiding. Tears fell. Drums resumed. The name of Iduka would never be forgotten, but the fight had come at a cost. Obina, the palm winged tapper, had died from his wounds. 3 others were badly injured, yet the people wept with both pain and pride. They had not run. They had stood, and they had won. By dawn, the village gathered. The gorilla was chained, exhausted, breathing heavily. Some villagers cried at the sight. Some shouted in triumph. The women danced and ululated. The children peeked from behind walls. They had won. The gorilla, now subdued, was locked in a strong iron cage. The blacksmiths reinforced it with wood and stone. Around it, they built a museum of bravery. Inside, they displayed cracked machetes, torn shirts, and a piece of Obina's hat, his last reminder. His grave was made just outside the museum, with flowers and respect. Visitors came from far and wide to see the gorilla of Iduka. Students, journalists, travelers, all drawn by the tale of 100 men who fought a giant with only their bare hands and unity. At the entrance of the museum stood a carved wooden plaque that read, "Here rests Ogaru, the beast that tested our strength and proved our unity. We are Iduka. We do not run." And so, Iduka became known, not just as a village, but as a symbol of courage. The gorilla never escaped. It lived quietly, observing the village it once terrorized. Some say it even learned to calm down, humbled by the strength of humans who refused to bow to fear. Till this day, when the drums of Iduka sound in the evening, the gorilla listens quietly, but it never roars again.